Good morning, everybody. I'm Larry Jacobs. This is Pre-K-12 Education Talk Radio on Monday, May 22nd, 2023. It's nice to have you with us today. And it's also going to be very nice to have our Equity Award-winning guest with us today talking about special education, family coordination, and equity work in the field of special education. Let me turn this off. Got to do that. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, that's Dr. Kristin Vogel-Campbell, again, an Equity Award winner, working school district in San Mateo Foster City School District as the coordinator of special education right outside of San Francisco. And again, she's an Excellence in Equity Award winner for special education in 2022. My name is Larry Jacobs. If I forgot to mention that, we're just back from a little vacation, which was just great out in the Berkshires in Massachusetts. And we're thrilled to be here today. And speaking, by the way, of the Equity Awards, nominations are now open for the 2023 Excellence in Equity Awards, and that's at ace-ed.org/awards. There were 160 plus nominees and over 50 winners in 2022. And we're looking to highlight and celebrate even more contributions this year, just like we're doing with Kristin. Okay, on our website, you'll find 29 categories dedicated to companies, organizations, products, and leaders, along with 15 categories for educators, paraprofessionals, key group, and support staff of all roles. Okay, so 20 of the categories are all new this year, so be sure to check them out. The nomination process is open until August 4th, but now is the best time. The early bird period goes until June 2nd. Giving companies the best pricing. So nominate today at ace-ed.org/awards or email awards@ace-ed.org with any questions. And we'd love to have you nominate yourself, your colleagues, your favorite companies, et cetera, et cetera. Without further ado, let me bring on our very special guest today, who's 3 hours behind me in time, so it's only 7:30 in the morning out there. Good morning, Kristin. It's Larry here.
Hey, good morning. It's definitely a little bit on the early side here, but I'm glad to be joining you this morning.
Thank you for joining us, and I know it is early today, okay, for you out there. It's middle of the morning for us here on the East Coast, okay, so it's just great to have you. And again, you're an Equity Award winning educator, and I can't thank you enough for being part of everything we do and for all the good work that you do, okay? It's really something. And before we go further, you've written a book, and it's going to be published a little bit later this year from Roman and Littlefield, and just tell us about that.
Yeah,
Brag.
so I will do my best.
Brag.
Yeah, so I do have a book coming out either in the fall or early winter of this year with Roman and Littlefield. It is partnering with culturally and linguistically diverse families in special education. And the really wonderful thing about this work is that this is really the first work that we've done some extensive kind of research about what kind of literature is out there. This is the first book of its kind that centers the narratives of parents who have children in special education. So what I did as part of my work was I engaged in dialogue with 11 families, and I believe 5 or 6 of them I required language interpretation. We have families that speak Spanish, Italian, Tagalog, which is one of the native languages of the Philippines,
right.
Japanese. So just getting an idea of their experiences and perspectives and how that can inform educators to better their practice. It was a life-changing work for me, so I'm hoping to share that with everyone else.
It's going to be a work-changing thing for everybody in education. It's really, really important. You just corrected something that I've been making a mistake on for years. Say the word of the Filipino language again.
Tagalog.
Tagalog. You know what I've been saying my whole life is Tagalog.
Like the Girl Scout cookie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think also
Tagalog.
like on the East Coast, I don't, and I'm originally from New York too. I don't think that we interact with Filipino folks as frequently as we do here on the West Coast. And Tagalog is one of, I believe, dozens of native languages in the Philippines.
It is one of the many languages out there, and I've been emphasizing the wrong syllable for I can't tell you for
you know
years
what?
and years and years.
It's all good. You were today years old when it was Tagalog.
There you go. It's great to have you here. And by the way, Kristin was on before. We did some work in science education on a show in March of 2021. So it's great to have you back here. I just want to say that. And, you just brought this up, and it's so darn important. And I want to ask you a lot of questions about this. Family coordination and working with equity in that regard in special education. By the way, you're the coordinator of special education in San Mateo Foster City. You've been working at it for over 20 years, special day class teacher, resource specialist, teacher and special assignment, program specialist, director of special education. Now you're the coordinator of special education in a pretty good-sized school district, okay? And there's so much, okay, cultural challenges these days, okay? And we've got to learn to work with that. Okay, but my question is the other way. Are folks who are from other countries, okay, who come to our country, okay, with different cultural backgrounds, do they they understand special ed as well as they should? Is it available in all the countries you're dealing with? I mean, that's an important starting point. Do they even know what this is for their child who may need it? Is it everywhere?
Well, I think, I think just to your point, first of all, I think that a lot of families who are, born and raised in America, first, second, fifth generation Americans, I think a lot of our English-speaking families don't understand special education and how it works.
Good point.
So there's that.
Thank you.
And I think just education across the world is... It's so different. I think there are a lot of countries where students who have special needs are integrated completely into the school day. Then there are other places where students that might have a physical or a cognitive disability are still excluded from public education. So it really depends, and that piece isn't necessarily like the scope of my work, but I think when we come in to when a family comes in to our district, what I've learned over the laundry list and decades long career that I've had, I come in with the working assumption that we're starting out from the ground up, and to explain everything in detail as opposed to assume that they know what I'm talking about, and to do so in a way that doesn't come across as demeaning or belittling,
right.
But to make sure that they have an understanding of what's happening so that they can ask questions and they can challenge things that don't resonate with them or sound like what their child needs. So it really is just, assuming that we're starting with carte blanche. And if a parent then tells me about coming from another state or coming from another country, that's also something that we need to take into consideration when working with them, because sometimes it's a totally different mindset.
It really is. And, I wanted to ask you, so San Mateo Foster City is south of San Francisco and north of San Jose, if I may. Okay, and just describe the school district in terms of demographics so people know where you're coming from as we talk about all this. And I know you're from the East Coast, but you've certainly been in the California schools for a while. So just talk about who you deal with on a regular basis so they can identify with you.
Yeah, of course. So, yes, we are probably almost halfway between San Francisco and San Jose.
Yes.
We are a pre-K through 8 district, and I believe our enrollment is about 11,000 right now. So we are the largest elementary school district in our area. And we have a really diverse mix of students. We have I believe we are at about 30 or 35% Latinx, Hispanic, Latino. We have a large percentage of white students, European American, Asian, Chinese, Japanese. We have a large Brazilian population, also Asian Pacific Islander, Tongan, Samoan, Fijian. The one group that isn't really represented in our district is we have very few students who identify as Black or African American, and that is because of historically racially segregated housing and covenant laws and restrictions in the Bay Area. So there's a lot that goes into moving from one district to another, and if you go 10 minutes down the road, you have a school district that is primarily African American and Black. So it's all focused on who was allowed to live where.
Wow.
Wow. So and that's not something that the average classroom teacher comes in knowing. There's so many different dynamics at play.
It's funny because San Francisco.
Go ahead, sorry.
So no, it's okay. San Francisco is considered the most liberal corner, if I may, of the United States. Okay, it's so liberal there, and then you have the racial covenants that have kept people apart. Okay, because when you described, when I asked you about Foster City, you described just a beautifully diverse group, okay, of people. We're going to go down the whole list again, and I certainly would have expected, Black people to be in there as well as Caucasian. All right, and that's another group you didn't talk about. Are there a lot of Caucasian kids in the school district, or is it mostly all the varied ethnic groups you talked about?
We do. We have a percentage of white students. I would think it's about 20 or 30%.
Wow, great district.
Yeah, I would say that anyone that's really interested in kind of learning about why we have populations dispersed the way that we do, and East Coast, West Coast, Midwest. There's an amazing book called The Color of Law. And it's not specific to education, but it really kind of dives into why we have populations the way that they are today. And it does go back to the New Deal and racial covenants and who was allowed to take out loans and redlining and all those other things. So it's really fascinating.
Wow, that is fascinating. Thank you for that, The Color of Law. So when you're dealing, what percentage of the kids in Foster City are in special ed or have IEPs? Maybe that's a better way to put it.
Yeah. So we have, out of our 11,000 students, we have about 1,100, so about 10%, give or take, and that is around the average in California. It kind of deviates between 12, 13%. Some districts have less than that, but we're seeing that 10, 11% is what's typical in our state and just across the country and as a whole.
So, go ahead, please. Good, continue.
Oh, and I was going to say that's a combination of students who just, have speech services. So some students that have resource. So that's kind of like learning center. I'm not sure how you would call that on the East Coast, but RSP, push and pull out. Some students that spend most of their day in a self-contained classroom, and then we have other students who are served out of district because their needs can't be met in our district. But that's a very small percentage. So it's a spectrum of services.
I was just going to say it's a diverse group within a diverse group. It's just absolutely astounding. And as you're dealing, and I want to talk about this again, your book is about cultural relationships there and family relationships. And special ed it works with families probably more than, and I hope, more than just about any other group in education, okay? And all the educators have to deal with all the linguistic challenges, et cetera, the cultural challenges, et cetera. But special ed, it's not called special ed for no reason. It is special, okay? And talk about some of the barriers that you've seen in there, okay, as you're dealing. And by the way, the ethnicities are everywhere in our country, everywhere, okay? And teachers are not trained to deal with this. At least they didn't used to be. Hopefully they are more and more, but who knows, okay? Talk about the barriers you see as you're dealing with families trying to be equitable to everybody, but they're all from different places, so to speak. Go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the, I kind of want to twist the question to talk about the barriers that parents experience.
Go ahead.
And so, just so based on my research, after talking with not just these 11 families, but, families that I've had relationships with for 5-6 years as their students move up the grade levels. And I think, first of all, I think that we all, I assume positive intent with the work that educators do. I think sometimes the missteps that we make are coming from a place of lack of knowledge, and professional development and training is one of the things that I stress so much in everything that I do. So I think that sometimes, because we are so overworked and overwhelmed with paperwork, that I think sometimes schools, teachers, districts will make it so that special education is convenient for us, not necessarily convenient for the families. So, scheduling, IEPs, not necessarily taking into consideration when a parent works, or if, they can make it to a meeting at 8:30 in the morning, if a parent drives, language interpretation, even, talking specifically about our programs when we're talking about inclusion, having students from a self-contained classroom mainstream into a general education class. This isn't the case anymore in our district, but, back in the day, about, 10, 15 years ago, when a student in a self-contained class would mainstream in, they would find a chair and they would kind of like squeeze into a space that was already established. Now, in our district, every student that comes into that classroom has a desk that's allocated for them, so they have a place, they have belonging, and there's a sense of community, which is really fantastic. And then the other barrier is that a lot of parents feel that their perspectives and experiences are disregarded, where asking parents for their input is just seen as something that's procedural, other than actually listening to them, acknowledging, validating their truth, and then saying, okay, how can we work this into the meeting so that at the end we ask you, did we meet or address your concerns? So it's not just a place where, okay, well, what are your concerns? Okay, thank you. Moving on according to our own agenda, So there's a lot. There's a lot. Parents need to advocate for their kids. IEPs and special education don't need to be adversarial. We're all working towards the same goal. And I think, having our meetings structured in a way where everyone has an equal and equitable seat at the table. We still have a lot of our IEPs virtually, but now we're coming back and we're having more and more of our meetings back in person. When I facilitate a meeting, I don't like having a parent walk into a room with a bunch of folks already sitting at the table, because that also gives off the impression that they're just visiting. We all walk into the room at the same time.
Also, it's an inequitable power, a look at power.
Exactly.
It's not comfortable to walk into it. So it's like going into a lawyer's office and there's 12 lawyers sitting there and you. Okay.
Exactly. So everyone walking in at the same time, the parent getting to pick their seat, and I'm also working with some of our site leaders and our special education director to see if we can shift towards having circular table conference tables as opposed to squares, so that everyone can look at each other as opposed to one side of the table versus the other side of the table. So it's even little things like that. you know?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Kristin
We're all here for a common
Vogel-Campbell,
purpose.
Knights of the Special Ed of the Round Table. I mean, it's
Yeah.
that's, you know, there's a point there that everyone is equal at a round table. Okay,
Yes.
and it makes a lot of sense. Do you find that people, again, I want to get into the diversity challenge, you know, all those groups that you talked about. Okay, do most people from, and I'll say people from different ethnicities, especially if they're fairly new to this country, okay, do they feel comfortable? You know, cultures are different regarding education all over the world. Okay, but here in the U.S., we really do want people to feel comfortable with and we want to give them as much as we can. Okay, sometimes we can't always do that, but we try. But do you find that they understand that most as the cultures you're dealing with, do they get it that you're there to help them, etc. That it's not an adversarial situation?
Yes, I think so. I think that is definitely that yes, we're here to help your child. I think that is, I can generalize and say that I think that for the majority of the time, that's a given. I think that depending on where our families are coming from, their comfort level of interacting and challenging or questioning what an educator says is different. I think, you know, for generalizing again, I think for a lot of our like white families who are you know, born in this country, they have more empowerment to question or push back on something when a teacher or a speech pathologist says something that doesn't sound right. But I think a lot of other families from different backgrounds, they defer to the educator as the professional or the expert. Yeah. And that's very difficult to navigate, to tell families, no, it's okay. You can question this educator. Yeah. Like we don't want to invalidate their beliefs about like respect, but we want them to have that, you know, equitable voice. It's a push and pull.
Not disrespectful.
Yeah.
Okay, we talk respectfully among ourselves. And I wanted to ask you something else, which I thought was very important. We're talking about inclusion for a special ed kid with an IEP. Okay, they're going to maybe go into a regular classroom, mainstreamed into a regular classroom. We can say that, and that's simple to say, but it's not so easy to do because most teachers, okay, you know, special ed teachers aside, aren't trained in special ed. Okay, and a kid goes in. You want to do that. That's the success. Okay, to move someone into a mainstream class. Okay, you know, and get them involved, et cetera, make them feel comfortable. But the teachers have to understand that too.
Yep.
And we talk about the families, but now the families in a meeting that's been run by the special ed department, and their child may be going to classes that are not taught by a professional special ed teacher. Okay, how do you coordinate and make it happen with the other teachers?
Yeah, and that's a lot of collaboration that special education does with the Ed Services Department. I think the number one thing, we can put all of the plans in place and all the professional development in place. It's a mindset. So for me, when I go in to talk to general ed teachers and they're hesitant about having students with an IEP enter their room, it's coming from a place of, I don't know what to do, and I don't want to do the wrong thing for this kid. Yeah. So it's giving them the tools, it's giving them that knowledge, lots of professional development and training about universal design for learning, which is just built on accommodations. You know, pairing our gen ed teachers with a special education teacher, not necessarily in like a co-teaching model, but having our special ed teachers join grade level meetings, having them kind of walk through the IEP for the gen ed teacher to kind of break down what this is, what an accommodation is, this is what the behavior plan looks like, having other folks and experts come in and provide their input, and then making sure that we circle back with that general ed teacher, ask them how things are going, bringing them into the IEP not just as a general ed representative, and I'm air quoting here and you can't see that, but having that gen ed teacher actually contribute and feel empowered to also share during the IEP meeting. And that's, we're not there yet 100% across the board.
It can't be.
But I think when we're talking about inclusion, inclusion isn't something that we do. Inclusion is something that is. And, it's just, okay, well, today we're going to do inclusion. Tomorrow we're going to do this. It should just be. It should just be. I mean, our society is inclusive. Or should be inclusive. So, yeah.
I have to ask you this, though, and this has always been a challenge, and I remember back when I went to school, it was a long, long time ago, okay? Mm-hmm. But, and I hope this has changed, and maybe you can give me some insight on it. Teacher education. Let me choose me. I was a history teacher, okay? A lot of my courses were in social studies, history, all that sort of stuff, and there were a few in education, but most of it was on the history side, all right? There was very little mention of special education. Okay, when we had kids after I became a teacher, you start to have these kids. I don't even know what was going on. How has that changed? Because all the things you're saying are so important. Okay, about this, how has that changed? Is there a better understanding from the general teacher? Okay, about how to work with a special ed kid. When you deal with this all the time. All right, what are you finding? Is it better now than it was? I hope so.
Yes, I definitely do. I definitely think that there is a better understanding of how to work with kids that have diverse needs. I think, I entered teaching in the early 2000s. So we've come a long way in terms of not just awareness, but acceptance. Students on the autism spectrum in general education classes. That is much more common. Now we are focusing on students with, specific learning disabilities and being able to kind of parse out, okay, is this a writing disability? Is this a reading disability? Is this a math disability? I think we still have a really long way to go.
We do.
We have students that have physical disabilities but are able to work at grade level with their peers, fully integrated throughout the day. Where they're not spending any time in the general education setting, but they're getting, speech or PT or physical therapy or occupational therapy. But I think it's also important, special education laws they're not that old. IDEA has only been around since the mid-70s.
That's
ADA
That's a long time.
It's a long time, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not.
Okay. I'm going to argue with you. We're not talking about the Ten Commandments here, okay?
Well,
The special education, I love you. I'm only arguing for the sake of this, but the special education laws have been around since the 1970s, okay?
Right.
And there's more and more kids involved in special education, some aspect of it, than ever before. And considering that, and this, Kristin, there are fewer and fewer special education teachers available. Okay, we got more kids and less teachers. We all know that. Okay, it's rough out there. All right, and a lot of great special ed teachers have been thinking about leaving. So my point is that the education schools have to make sure they understand that when they're teaching somebody to teach history, okay, in grades 6 through 12, they have to say, you're going to be working with kids in special education that have IEPs. Here's how you handle that. Here's what you have to do. Here's who you have to work with. That never came up in the old days. And my point is that it has to come up now because we lay too much stuff on the special ed teachers. We don't have enough of them. They come down like you did from heaven. Okay, and they're going to wind up there eventually. Okay, they have the patience of saints. Okay, we ask them to do everything. All right, with a ton of mandates with little funding to make sure all the mandates happen. I can go on, and you would say the same thing to me. We've got to make sure that regular teachers understand this and help out, because with more and more kids involved, there's not enough time in the day to keep meeting with everybody back and forth to get this right. That's my soapbox for today. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think that like teacher education needs to incorporate more classes specifically about working with diverse learners. I know that in New Jersey, for example, my nephew I think went to Montclair State University, and he earned his general education and special education credential at the same time. So they must have done something to have made that an easy not an easy process, but they made it simpler so
possible.
That he's a first grade teacher, but he also has that special education knowledge, and I think that's where we need to go moving forward, going back to the university level and looking at our credentialing programs and switching those up so that our teachers are equipped and empowered and they know what to do.
Dual credentialing.
So it's not just all on the
whatever.
Special education teacher.
It can't. There's not enough of them. Okay?
Right.
And if I may, saying you folks in that regard, you folks work so hard to get it right. And the goal is to move these kids, not all the kids, obviously, but to move the kids into mainstream regular life in school. So those other teachers have to understand exactly what's going on. You brought up something. You were talking about all the laws in special education. Okay, and you asked me to ask this question. I love this question. Okay, how do you find the balance between what is legal, okay, and what is right? All right, and and again, I'll say it again. The feds and everybody puts down all these mandates. Oh, you want us to fund them too? No, I'm sorry, just do them without dollars. Okay, so legal and right. So just talk about that as a special educator.
Yeah, and I think that, obviously there are laws and protections for students in place, and we are mandated to follow those. But in order to provide education for our students that addresses all of their needs, instead of just checking that box and going, okay, I followed IDEA today, we need to move towards better practices and humanizing our students and our families, and not just checking it off for compliance. So what's legal, I think that's our baseline, and what is right is more. It's making sure that students are involved in their IEP planning, even from an early age in elementary school, that we're always checking in with families, that we are, doing our due diligence to make sure that their accommodations are in place when they're in a general education setting. And, then, yes, when we come back to the IEP and the paperwork, we can say, yes, we've done these, but we've gone one step beyond. And again, like all of the things that you've talked about with, there is a shortage of teachers, but I think that's a bigger conversation about respect for teachers and pay for teachers, and especially for special education teachers, there's always an added layer of roles of responsibilities. So there's that. But, I specifically chose to go into special education for a reason. It's not a savior complex, but it's working with the students who have been put off to the side. That's a very conscious choice, and we have to do better than just the standard for our students.
Yeah, we really do, and the world of education has to look at this, as we were saying before, and change the way they train teachers. So that every teacher can help every other teacher. Okay, it's that simple. Okay, we've got to make it happen. We're not in silos, and we're learning this as we go. I just want to go back. When you were in college, what did draw? I mean, you said it. You want to help those kids that are not quite mainstream there. But what was it that drew you to special ed?
Yeah,
and stay in it all this time. I mean, it's wonderful. Yeah.
So I actually when I finished my undergraduate at Hunter College in New York, City University.
Yeah, sure.
I was not an education major. When I was in college, my nephew, who is now 23 years old, a different nephew, by the way.
The Montclair
No,
State guy?
A different nephew.
Okay. Yeah.
Different nephew. Big family. He was diagnosed on the autism spectrum, and his family also lives in New Jersey, and the level of support and the interventions that were put into place immediately was just kind of mind-blowing to me. And, at that point, I didn't know much about autism or special education, but, I needed to kind of make a career decision because my initial plan didn't work out the way that I wanted it to.
What was your original major? What did you graduate in?
So my major in undergrad, I was an anthropology and urban studies major. So I wanted to be Indiana Jones, but going into grad school,
there's a new movie. You're on your way. There's a new
right.
movie, so you're good.
Yeah. You needed to have German and French and Latin, and language is one of the things that is really tough for me. So I'm like, okay, maybe not going to do that. So I was pivoting either towards social work or education, both very similar but very, very different. And NYU Steinhardt School of Education has an amazing accelerated master's program in special education. And that was kind of the step that I took after grad school, moved out to California, and, I've been at it in different roles ever since. What keeps me in it are the bright spots. Because, there have been times where I've said, you know what, maybe this isn't for me. I'm too tired, I'm too burnt out. But when I get to sit in a meeting and hear about the progress that a kid has made, or sit in a meeting where parents are having a back and forth conversation with families, or getting to walk into a classroom and see students with significant needs learning, like that kind of keeps me going, and hopefully will keep me going for quite a bit longer at this point.
Yeah, don't leave. We need you there. Kristin, we need you there. Don't leave, for goodness sakes. Okay, like you said sometimes you figure you're burned out. Is this for me, etc. I got big news for you. It is for you. Okay, you really you've shown that time and time again, and you continue to show it. It's amazing, and I hope that San Mateo Foster City knows how lucky they are to have you as coordinator of special ed. I mean, it's really just so darn important. And you're one of our Excellence in Equity Award winners. Congratulations for that. It's great. Thank you. Great to have this conversation. You are special. You are special. Let me just say it that way. You are special. Thanks for being with us today.
Of course. Thank you so much.
You bring a lot to the party, Kristin. You bring a lot to the party.
I definitely do.
You do, okay? Thanks a million. And now go on with your day. It's 10 after 8 there, okay? So enjoy your day, and thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Larry.
Oh, you are more than welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Bye, Kristin. Dr. Kristin Vogel-Campbell of the San Mateo Foster City School District. Okay, check it out. What a great lady, and a special education equity award winner. Check all that out. Didn't mean to hit them with that. Please go over to ace-ed.org/awards or email awards@ace-ed.org with any questions, okay, about our nominations, which are now open for the 2023 Excellence in Equity Awards, okay, and the nomination process will be open until August 4th. Today's May 22nd. You got plenty of time, but now is the best time because the early bird period goes until June 2nd, and it gives companies the best pricing. So please check it all out. ace-ed.org/awards. We'll archive this show, as we always do, where we live on the web, over at ace-ed.org. Kristin, thanks a million. I'm Larry Jacobs. This is Pre-K-12 Education Talk Radio. Thanks for listening.